crap. Okay, and then it turns out that most of the people, there's actually a whole industry of people who do nothing but search engine optimization. You know this whole space, this whole thing? The people who make a living trying to optimize garbage on the internet. And Google's figured out that, hey, this internet is actually a vast real estate space that allows me to rent, just like air, to other people. So when someone clicks on the internet on your computer, they pay me. How cool is that? It's really, really cool. And I can sponsor links. I can sell real estate. And they made an incredibly powerful business model that has fundamentally redefined what ad companies look like. So Google redefined itself, not as a search company, but a media company. And they redefined this notion of what search really meant to what people's perceived view of what search should be. So today, right, just like you have enter button, right, you will see on an iPhone, there's a little Google button, right? You hit Google search, which is phenomenal. So is there something like that, right? Can you have a continuous audit button, a continuous monitor button? I don't know. That's a good idea. Maybe we could do that. But is there a notion that the complexity, right, of the problem is not going to go away? It's only going to become worse, and there are going to be multiple stakeholders. I actually don't see my mom there. She should be. She's a big stakeholder in this whole thing. She wants to know everything that's going on in my life. She audits everything. Everything, okay? So this notion that this complexity is not going to go away, and there's all this stuff that people have, the charts, graphs, charts, but the idea, right, is that if you think about the CFO study that IBM did, if you can migrate your business from managing the number, okay, to managing the business, so what does the customer really, really care about? I don't think we've answered that question, right, when it comes to our space. And what exactly are we talking about? And I don't have the answer yet, but I'm going to try to attempt to give you at least my view on it. But the notion, right, of you know, reducing the overall cost of function, and this is actually a fascinating study. Actually, I don't know if I have that particular slide, but it turns out that high-performing companies across the board, across S&P 500, if you look at their G&A, they use 9% less financial resources than their next biggest competitor. So if you were to compare, I don't know if it's true in certain cases, but if you were to compare, let's say Microsoft with IBM, okay, even though they're probably half in terms of revenues, if you perhaps compare the two finance departments, right, or which is what I think people are trying to do in terms of, like, how do you know what's a well-performing company, right? So a part of what people are trying to do with standards such as XBRL, and we'll talk about that in just a second, is that people naturally gravitate to creating a set of standards that you believe will promote innovation. And I think in our particular case, especially in the financial world, there's just so much focus around managing the numbers that the focus around, especially for CFOs, to drive managing the business doesn't really come to the fore, because, you know, they're worried about the auditor showing up, they're worried about, you know, this reporting standard here in this particular country, they're worried about, you know, things that are not really relevant to driving the business to the next level. They're more focused around, how do I get that monthly reporting done? And I recall there's actually a very cool Harvard case study. This was maybe back in the late 90s. There was a fellow by the name of, the name escapes me, but he left Procter & Gamble to become the COO of Microsoft. And I spent about 8 years at Microsoft in the late 80s, and it was a real startup. Okay, I mean, you could do anything you want. You know, I remember buying, you know, $50,000 worth of pizza, by the way. And we just buy a lot of pizza, you know, T-shirts, and there was, you know, so internal controls had a different meaning, right? Because people thought that, you know, you got to be honest, and you got to have. So there was a very famous memo, I think you can probably Google it, that I think Steve Ballmer wrote, called the Shrimp and Weenie Memo. Okay, it's a very famous memo about how they're going to curtail costs within the company. And Bob Herbold, that's the guy's name. came from P&G, and in a large company meeting, he said, here's what I want to do for one of my organizations. He said, I should know at any given time, right, with a margin of maybe a few $1 million, right, what my cash position is going to look like, what my revenue position is going to look like, and I'm going to close my books. And this is you're talking Microsoft, okay, tens of billions of dollars every day. And once you had a very simple business goal like that that says, I'm going to close my books every day regardless of my size, scope of my organization, it put the entire value chain behind that to work. And it was a very, very hard problem. We didn't even have systems. I don't think we had bought even SAP at that point in time. And it's fascinating that once you define a high-level business goal that says, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to know at any given time. And even for a small company like us, it takes us maybe 12 days, 14 days to get my monthly reports of financials. And we're a small company. And you have these multi-billion-dollar companies that close their books every single day. So I think one of the key challenges is how do you get to a point where when you want to have high-performing organizations, you would presume that you want to have highly compliant processes and systems. And because you're highly compliant, it will drive more efficiency and effectiveness in the system. This is the slide I was looking for. Why did I have to make it up? Right here, right? World-class companies operate in a more effective internal control environment with control costs 45% less. Again, this is a real study. Actually, I think there's a newer version of this report, but it's a fascinating report, right? So this is, this type of, I'm a numbers guy, right? This type of effectiveness and efficiency is what you should be driving into the system, regardless of whether it's continuous auditing, continuous monitoring. It really doesn't matter what you call it, right? The question is, can you drive out inefficiencies and ineffectiveness in the system to fundamentally redefine what is the business problem you're trying to solve? And I truly believe that technologies like CA and CCM can help you get to this level of operation if you fundamentally redefine the problem, right? Which is why I was giving you the examples around the iPhone and crazy ideas like with cars with no tires. So you all get this, right? Which is that fundamentally the whole bunch of problems. If you don't do it, you're going to have all these problems, right? You're going to extend credit to people who don't deserve it, right? And what it fascinates me is that how does it? Is anybody from AIG here? I just want to make sure before I make fun of them that they're here. What fascinates me is that AIG, that was in the risk business, right? That's what they do for a living, right? Day in and day out, they evaluate risk. How could they not understand what their risk profile looked like? It fascinates me. And Michael and I know a very good friend who introduced me to actually the company, and we'd gone there to make a presentation. And I kid you not, they are using general ledgers that were kind of built in the 1835. And they still use those systems. They're not going to go away, right? So technology has a tendency to kind of stick around for a very, very long time. And the biggest problem was consolidating 3,000 or so general ledgers. And they had a team of 500 people doing nothing but putting the data files together. Some such crazy, like, what are we talking about here? Because they acquire companies. It's a real company, right? You acquire companies, you grow globally, you've got different set of instruments. The complexity is quite unimaginable, right? So I think we're kidding ourselves if we truly believe that if, by applying more complexity and more complex technologies to an already complex problem is going to simplify the problem, we're kidding ourselves. Right? So I guess what I'm imploring the team here, right, with hopefully with some cutting-edge research, is that we fundamentally redefine what this problem is that we're trying to solve, so we can actually look at completely new set of solutions that doesn't require all the stuff that we've talked about, right? Which is all today's generation tools. So here's another motivational thing for you. So what's all this thing worth? This is my view on this. Just because you're necessary doesn't mean you're important.